So, good morning everyone. Today we'll be looking at morph targets, or sometimes called blend shapes. So imagine we have, let's pretend this is our face. I'll just have some subdivisions so there is something to it. Okay, I have a cube and it's an editable poly. And let's pretend this is a face. I want it to do some facial expressions, some facial animation. So there are two ways of doing this. First of all, of course, we could do it with bones, but the more common one for facial animation is morph targets. So the most important part is that I copy the existing model with the same amount of polygons, and the order of polygons is the same and so on. Of course you don't see it, so it doesn't matter now. And then I change each copy with a different facial expressions. So and I don't know, all of it goes up, let's say. Okay, so now we have an original model and the same model, just some vertices are moved up or down or somewhere. Now what I do is I add a modifier. It's under animation and it's called morph. Is it under animation? It should be. Yeah, morpher. It's called morpher. And what we have, basically the important part is here. We have targets. Load multiple targets. We can just grab them from the list. If you name them correctly, it will recognize the ones that have exact same amount of vertices. And you see what happens here. I can control these values and the change. I can also animate it. So say now it's 0. I go to frame something and change it. And of course I can mix and match them. So you see it's not only up but also extends. And important part for you as a game designer is that when I export selected, don't know where to export, doesn't matter now, under FBX we can, here under animation probably, bake animation, let me see, where is it? Basically we can allow these morph targets to be included. No, deformers, yes, morphs. So basically if you do this, Unity or Unreal or CryEngine, whatever you're using, should be able to grab this. So skins is for bone animation and morphs for morph target. So let's try doing that now with your characters. Might be you haven't modeled them totally, it's unfinished, but whatever you have, let's try just exploring the morph targets, and let's try doing them. Another thing you might want to have a look is curve editor. So if it's selected, I should have my modifiers, you see, and I still can control the curve here, can make it, somehow different. So those are two different targets, and it will change the speed, how they deform. Of course it's hard to see because it's so quick. Let's extend it a bit so you see it even goes negative here. Let's see how that looks like. I guess negative for morph targets doesn't really work, but basically here no change, and the change is very fast at the end. So basically you can use curve editor to control the speed between two keyframes basically. So I grabbed this from Moodbox, the default model, and basically you could, of course it's not defined here, your models will be much better, I mean with proper topology and all of that, proper edge loops and so on, but basically, I forgot to make a copy, small detail, top level. So I'll make a copy, whatever, and it's sometimes good to use soft selection here with this tool. So he raises an eyebrow, top level. Let's make a copy. Oh, I shouldn't make a copy of this. I should make a, oops, deleted both of them. I should make a copy of this one of default. Now he will, I mean, with this model he cannot open his mouth or anything because it's not prepared for that, but just to have an example. Another example with, not with boxes. So modifiers, animation, morpher, load targets, all of them load, and he raises one eyebrow or the other one. Oh, he not raises, he lowers the eyebrow. Probably you can't do that. So let's try doing that. Now we will try to use morph-targets in a more creative way. So let's say wind simulation. I will create a flag, and of course some game engines have their own simulation ways of doing simulation, and that's even more preferred way because it would be dynamic. So you know, whenever your character walks, jumps, the simulation, cloth simulation will follow that. But in some cases you maybe don't want to set it up because of course it eats, I don't know if it's GPU or CPU, whatever. Might be you would like to have it baked in. So let's say if you're in your game you don't use wind very much, but for visual I don't know, quality, you need some flags waving in the wind. So another option would be just to bake the animation and use it, create it elsewhere in Max, Maya, whatever Blender you're using, and to use it in your game. So I created here a flag. Now let's create it as a, let's make it a cloth. So modifiers, cloth and cloth. So here I'm using Max 2020. There were quite a bit of changes between, I don't know, Max 15, 16, 17, 18. They changed the different engines, physics engines. So be careful with that. But here I will be using cloth, and what we need to do here is to attach the cloth to the pole. So I just, oops, sorry, I'm using the wrong one. That's not the one I wanted to use. Sorry, not the cloth. You see the confusion here. Which one do I want to use? Mass Ethics cloth. I think it's M cloth, this one. Yes, that's the one. You see there are different engines inside Max, and now we will be using this one. So what I have here, I selected vertices, make a group. So let's say attach to pole, whatever, you write the right name, and we make it a node to this. Now I could, for instance, animate my, oh, let's get out of here, animate my pole. So auto, let's make a keyframe, and let's move my pole here, and let's see what happens. So now you see nothing changes because the simulation is not on. So what I need to do is I go to again to modifiers. So not cloth, we are going to animation, under here animation, and we are using Mass Effects here. Utilities and show Mass Effects tools. And we can just try playing our simulation. It doesn't record the motion, it just plays it in real time. So you see, first of all, it uses this 0 in Z, the grid, as a collider, so sort of. And of course you see that it penetrates the pole itself, so we would need to set deflectors and whatnot. I might be able to just move it a bit up. So in the first keyframe I move both of them, and this keyframe, oh yeah, perfect. and we try it again. So apart that the cloth is very rigid now and very flexible, kind of, we would need to kind of work with its parameters here, you know, stretchness, density, all of those things, bendness. We would try to work with that. And stretch, let's turn this on. And of course, since we're pre-computing, we can use a lot of good things here. Forces. No, is it forces? No. You know, it would be much harder to use those advanced settings in game engine because they would be needed to calculate in real time, and this is the opposite way of that. We are not doing it real time. Of course, here it does it real time, but I mean when we export the model. So bake all. That will actually make keyframes. 100 keyframes. Should have made less, whatever. Okay, so we have this. So now normally when you export this, you should now learn your game engine and see if you can actually bake animation. So I'm not sure just baking animation will work when you will import it to whatever, I don't know, Unity. So in some cases it would not work. So what I would do is I would make some copies of this, like first state, second state, third state, and I would make always a copy. So the first state, let's call it 1. So we go here. Okay, maybe where it extends the most. Now I can make a copy. That would be 2. Contract, kind of. I make a copy. 3. Might be here. And you kind of make all these copies here. And now I'll hide the original model, which is this one, I think. Okay, I'll grab only my first one. So the first one is this the original state. I'll just convert it to double poly, and I should lose all the keyframes. I go to the second one. That was the most extended one, so somewhere here, I suppose. Again, converting it. The third one is kind of goes here, converted to poly, and that's it. Do we have more? I'll just use the original one, destroy it, and to the double poly. So we have these things. Now let's use this as a main object. Modifiers, animation, sorry. Yeah, modifiers, animation, morpher. And let's grab the other models as targets. Isolate selection, and let's see what we have. So, the naming is off. Now it goes to the third stage immediately, which we don't want. First we would want it to go to this state. So I would animate it, say, in a couple of frames it goes to this. And here, make sure it's still 0. I'll just up and down, up, 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 down. Okay, it's keyframed. Now I go to state 2, not sure which one it is. Yeah, this one. So, and this goes down. Yes, I'll repeat that these are zeros here. And the third one, let's say, starts here. I think it's, no, it's this one. and we remove that. Okay, so now we kind of transferred this to morph targets or blend shapes. We have four of them, and that might be another way you would have to experiment which one works better. If just baked animation works, I should name this better. So this is morphs. Let's actually rename this as well. So here we had morph face. Not sure was it face not, but this is just baked animation, which I'm not sure your game engine will support. Baked. And now we'll say morphs. Morphs flag. It's FBX. Make sure morphs are supported. Okay. So the next step would be to experiment if it works with your game engine. I will just try sketch. Okay, simple morph targets are working. You see, it just continuously loops. So it should work with game engine, hopefully. Again, depends. Oops, sorry, not where I needed to go. Let's see if the flag one works. So again, you might need to experiment quite a bit here with your game engine and FBX export settings and Google forums and all of that. Don't forget that FBX exporter has also versions, so you might use, 2011, 2012, whatever version of FBX exporter. So that's another thing to consider. Here you see my flag animation through morph targets did work. And now let's also see just baked animation, which normally doesn't work so easily. I think it's this one. Oh no, that's face. Well, most likely it won't work, I don't know. So you would try that in your game engine.